Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
Groundhog Day initially seems like a simple comedy, but the movie's meanings goes much deeper. In this episode, we're going to talk about the psychological aspects of the film and why so many people like Phil get stuck in a loop day after never-ending day.
Groundhog's Day, which came out in 1993, 31 years ago, is about Phil Connors. That's played by Bill Murray. He's a weatherman, and every year he has to go to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to do this live broadcast about the weather, but of course about the groundhog and Groundhog's Day. And as he goes there, first day is pretty funny, but he wakes up, and the second day, he's back on Groundhog's Day again. And basically, all about him reliving the same day over and over again, and then trying to deal with it. So hilarity ensues, but it actually gets touching in some areas. It does get sad. You know, there's a lot of emotions throughout the movie, although it is mostly comedy because you got Bill Murray. That's kind of a quick run through. We're going to break down the movie as we talk through. So, Nathan, what's the first question you have for us?
What is this film? Is this a philosophical film? Is it a comedy? I mean, the movie is much darker and deeper than I was expecting.
I would say it's a little bit of both. You know, Bill Murray, we talked about this off of the recording before we started recording it. He wanted this to be more of a philosophical movie. And Harold Ramis, who's another comedic genius, wanted this to be more comedy. And I think they found a good balance in the film. But it really does make you think about, I guess, what's important in life and changes that you have to make to become a better person, which is overall what Phil's journey is in this movie, is becoming less self-absorbed and more accepting and, you know, focusing his attention on others.
So kind of learning to live selflessly?
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a transition throughout, right? I mean, it evolves. Every time he has another chance at it, you see more and more of that coming through. He starts to figure it out piece by piece, and ultimately fading more from that self-centered version of him into that more, okay, I need to worry about other people. I need to think about other people and what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because at the beginning, he was all about, for one, just trying to find a way out of this town that he can't stand. But eventually in this movie, I mean, he gets to the point where he's saving that kid, you know, from falling out of a tree.
Every day.
And he didn't have to do that if he was still the original Phil would never have done that. He wouldn't have cared.
Well, you mentioned the emotion too. You know, think of the homeless guy that he helps out and just every single time, and no matter the outcome didn't change every time, but he still tried and tried and tried and tried, and that just got more intense. I think if you talk about the emotional aspect of the movie, there's more than just comedy to it. You get to those types of situations too, which I thought was pretty cool in the movie.
Yeah, it was a pretty dark moment because, you know, it's never good to witness somebody passing, especially, you know, if it's someone you know, and we don't know how many times he tried this. You know, we saw 3 or 4 different times of him feeding him, cleaning him, doing whatever he can to take care of him, and every time the man would pass away. So for him to have to relive that, well, even 3 times, let alone maybe he tried this 3 months, 3 years, every day, I'm going to save this guy. I got to try something different. Every day he failed. So the growing, you know, and his emotions and everything, it takes many steps back. I mean, he failed anywhere from 3 days to X amount of days, weeks, months, years, whatever, trying to save this guy. So, you know, it's not all an uphill climb because it's just like, oh, we went down there and now we're doing good with Andy McDowell's character. Oh, that didn't work. And so it's a very rocky climb, but
yeah, I mean, you think about the philosophical aspect of it. You know, this is one day repeating itself, but, you know, kind of the metaphor of it being significant of an entire lifetime of how you try things over and over again, and you have these peaks and these valleys and everything that you feel like you're finally figuring it out, then something just, you know, completely crashes it as you're getting up to a certain point, and you repeat that over and over again. I think it's very philosophical in that way. It's hard to deny that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it mirrors life a lot. For instance, I remember this one time we were trying to set up for this podcast, and it was over and over again, plugging things in, pulling things. And an hour and a half later, we're set up and doing what we're doing now. But
Obstacles we had to overcome.
yeah, and that's true. Disregarding the funny thing with us, that's true with life. I mean, how many times have you like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. All right, I got it. Nope. All right, that didn't work. Okay, let's go this direction, or let's try something different. So if you look past the comedy, which is hard to do because you have the greatest comedic actor ever and one of the greatest comedic directors ever and writers, if you look past that, you can pick up some things, working through those problems and continuously moving forward. And even though you're getting pushed back, I'm going to keep going forward. I'm breaking into a Rocky Balboa speech right now, but that's what the movie is about. And if you can take things from that, that adds a lot to the viewing pleasure of it.
Yeah, why didn't he stop saving people if the next day they just needed saving again? What is it that drove him to keep trying? Because you would think that eventually you would conclude, well, I might as well not save them because they're going to be alive again tomorrow and then die again and the next day. So what kept him from just giving up, deciding that, fate was fixed and that he couldn't make an impact on the world?
I mean, I think at first he really thought he had to change it in order to get out of this loop. Like that was his objective at first. Maybe it wasn't so much about helping other people. It was, hey, I have to fix these things to get out of this loop for me. But then eventually, as that evolved more into him actually having feelings behind this and really wanting to do these things over and over again, even though he knew the outcome was likely going to be the same, if he didn't give everything he had toward that effort, then I think he wouldn't feel right with that. And he knew he wouldn't get out of the loop in that case. So I think it goes from being kind of a selfish thing, hey, I know I have to complete these things, check these boxes to get out of this, to being, man, I really care about this situation and I want it to change. And I have to be the one to help make it change, even though it may not in the end, I still have to try.
Yeah. And I think the acceptance of him knowing that this is my life at this point. So the people around him, he starts to actually care for and make this the best that I possibly can make it. And through that, a different side of his personality shows up. But it's, I guess, persevering through it all, which I wrote down a little quote here because this kind of reminds me of this. We were talking about people getting stuck in a rut and failing. And what do you do? A lot of people you could just mail it in. You could give up. But one of my favorite quotes comes from Abraham Lincoln. And he said, the difference between life's greatest accomplishments and its most dismal failures is often, quite simply, the will to persevere. And this is coming from a guy who ran for several political offices and just got beat every time. And then he became president. So it's just keeping it going and having a mission and trying to see it through no matter what happens.
And you can see him grow through this too, because he didn't want to help these people. I mean, at first it was all about, he's focused on himself. He's going out with different women. He's spending all this money, all because he's picking up little things here. And then he kind of moves on to Andy McDowell's character. And then he's focused on her, and it's all about her and what can I do to be with her. And then he cracks because there's a section in there where he just tries to off himself, day after day after day after day. And again, it shows 3 or 4 different ways of him trying this, but how long was he in that dark period where he was trying to kill himself? It showed 4 times, but it could have been 4 months. It could have been a straight year of him trying over and over and over doing these things and just can't get it done. So I think it was a bunch of little different things where it helped him grow to the point where he's like, okay, now I must focus on being good because I've done everything else. Let's go with this route. And then, as he's doing this, he's growing into a better man.
It's funny. We talked about the debate. Is it a philosophical movie or just a comedy? in the first few minutes here, I mean, this sounds like if we were to just go on what we said about the movie, it sounds like a very serious drama.
True.
About a guy finding himself and figuring things out in this day that he has to relive, and all these crazy, terrible things happening he's trying to prevent. We haven't even got to the comedy part yet. So I think that almost answers our first question. You can't deny that philosophical part of it because we've spent these first few minutes just all over that part of it alone.
Yeah. I haven't even talked about the comedy part yet. Yeah.
It's almost like he went from thinking, let me out of this loop. What do I have to do to get out of this loop? To switching to thinking, okay, I must be in this loop because I have to learn something. So what am I supposed to learn about myself? What am I supposed to change about myself? And then changing his own situation almost became secondary after that.
Yeah.
Danny Rubin was one of the writers, and he actually said that he didn't set out to write a spiritual analogy. He just wanted to tell a story about human life and the periods where somebody gets trapped in a cycle, and no matter how much they want to escape, they can't. But in the end, it really seems like he ended up creating a spiritual movie, even though that's not what he set out to do originally. What do you guys think about that? It's like an accident that this happened.
It's true, but I think most people, when it comes to writing, I mean, it's not that they're writing something spiritual because of God or because of the way they were brought up or anything. I think they just tell stories and throw obstacles out in front, and it's like, how are you going to deal with this? And we all want to deal with things positively. I mean, obviously, there's a small group that loves chaos and stuff like that. We're not going to talk about that, but in most people, they want to do the right thing. They want to do the positive thing. And when you're writing a story, you want the story to end happy in most cases, or be positive for the main characters, stuff like that. And that's why movies that have happy endings and the good guys win and everything always are the highest grossing ones. And the dark ones that end sad and is awful, they just get nominated for Oscars. Yeah, I don't think he probably didn't go out to write a spiritual movie, but him being human, he's writing all these ways to overcome obstacles and make this person a better, which is spirituality. So I don't think he was going out saying, I want to write a movie about God and Groundhog's Day and Bill Murray. But that's why we made this podcast, because we can always find spiritual, positive messages throughout most movies. And people can learn from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about finding yourself within, right? I mean, it's spirituality. You think about God, you think about these other things, but it's about your relationship with other people too. And in these relationships, even though he had just met these people for that one day in Punxsutawney, over the time that he repeated these days over and over again, he's building the relationship with each one of those people that he encountered, even Ned at the end.
Yeah, even Ned Ryerson.
From punching him in the face to actually buying insurance from him, right? Is that what it was?
So, he got earthquake or hurricane insurance,
yeah,
or something like that in Chicago.
Yeah,
so I guess it's different than you, but
still, you don't need it.
It's like sometimes, maybe that's what we need to do in life. Every once in a while, maybe you just really want to punch someone in the face, but maybe you take a second, you hear them out, and maybe you help them out, and maybe things change.
Yeah. In a quote from the British Film Institute, they state that the pair of Ramis and Rubin used the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance as an outline for the film. So how does Phil experience each of these 5 stages of grief in the movie?
What do we got? We got denial. I think we're going to say the same thing. I think denial is like day 2, 3, where he's yelling at people. Why are you messing with me? What's this? This is only happening once a year, right? Obviously, he's catching little things. It's like, okay, this is the 3rd day in a row that this is happening, but he's constantly, trying to leave the town. He's telling people, I've done this yesterday. This isn't happening, so I think that was the most of the denial.
Yeah, just not accepting that this is happening again. They actually filmed a scene for this where he made his way out of town and got pretty rural outside of town, but then he woke up the next morning back in Punxsutawney, and the filmmakers cut that out because they didn't want the rules to get too complicated and confusing for the audience. They didn't want the audience to think like, well, what are the rules that they have to follow in this? So it's just cut it out. We'll just keep him in the town. It makes it easier to understand what's happening.
So what are some signs of anger?
Punching Phil or punching Ned.
Punching Ned, yeah.
That's the big one.
Phil?
Ned? So every day he ran into Ned on the street, and he tries to ignore him. He's trying to push him into traffic. Can't get away from him. And then one day he just snaps and Phil punches Ned right in the nose. But I think that's day what? Well, that's actually like day 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, he sees him every day, but he punched him about halfway through the movie. Yeah. He tried running away from him when he was pushing him away and everything like that. And one day he's just like,
that was like the height of the anger. Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing left. He's just, I'm not dealing with this. And then him on the mic when he's, I don't remember exactly what he says. We're like, and just like, kind of,
we pull this rat out of the box. We're never going to see spring or something like that. Yeah. So he goes off. Then, you can almost say him skirting death and stuff like that when he's sitting in the bar with the two drunks, and he's like, "What would you do if you live the same day over and over?" And they're like, "There's no consequences." So he just gets out in the car and just starts tearing through town. He's playing chicken with the train. He's knocking out mailboxes. And, I think it's partially him going crazy. But, there's a lot of anger when, anybody who drives a car into a mailbox has got to be angry about something.
It's almost like he's testing fate, or he's testing the universe to dare it to just go ahead and kill him or something.
Mm-hmm.
Bargaining.
Yeah, bargaining.
Give me the definition of bargaining.
That maybe comes down to him trying to do the right thing, but maybe not for the right reasons. I guess it's sort of like, hey, if I do this, then I'll get out of here. So if I do all these things right during this day, then I'm free. I'm going to get out. But it was more than that. He actually had the feeling behind it, not just the actions, but he had to have the feeling behind it. In the end.
Yeah, I guess him getting with the random women and everything. It's like, well, I guess I'm going to be here. I might as well make the best of it.
Doesn't he rob a bank truck too?
Yeah.
Yep.
Robs a bank
Steals
truck.
the Groundhog.
What good is that though? Because the next day you don't have the money. So
Just to see if he can do it.
Yeah.
He can do it. Why not?
And you can spend the money that day.
Yeah.
Just his luck, he would wake up the next day and it's actually the next day and he's a criminal.
Well, they even make a point of that in the movie because he comes down for breakfast and he's like, "Anybody here looking for me last night or this morning? Maybe a government official?" Or, "No, I don't think so. Is there something wrong?" "Apparently not."
Yeah.
And then just lays a big kiss on it.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's good bargaining. Just like, I'm going to be here. I might as well make the best of it.
There's kind of a debate about whether or not these 5 stages of grief actually happen in order, or whether or not they kind of spill over onto each other and they're kind of mixed together. And I think there's some of that in the film. He's not going through them like a textbook, like there's separation between each stage. I think in some cases he's experiencing more than one of these stages at once.
Yeah. I think while he's doing the bargaining, he eventually starts with the depression. He's trying to off himself several times. Toaster in the bathtub, jumps off the clock tower.
Crashes the truck he tries to kill the groundhog.
Yeah, he also tried to kill the groundhog. So that goes into his depression. But at the same time, I think he was still doing the other things where I'm going to go on a date with this girl, or I'm going to, rob the bank truck.
And then, of course, depression. That's the obvious part of the movie where he's just trying to kill himself over and over again. can't deal with Andy McDowell's character, who I can't remember her name. I don't think they say her
Rita.
name that often. Rita, that's right,
Rita.
because we didn't know it was Rita. Right. So Rita's Andy McDowell's character. He's been trying for who knows how much, and had to drink sweet vermouth on the rocks constantly, day after day, which I feel bad. Yeah, because I wanted to have a bottle of sweet vermouth here for us to try it, because I've never just drank sweet vermouth. But going through all this, and then just he's given up 100%. So obviously that's the depression.
Yeah, what was the turning point for him in acceptance? So, like, I honestly don't remember that particular point. When did he decide to stop trying to kill himself and actually go back to a more heartfelt attempt?
There wasn't that defining moment. It would have been cool. And I know it wasn't, this just came off the top of my head. I know they didn't want to make this spiritual, but, if he ran into a church just randomly, it's like, okay, how am I going to try to kill myself today? And he walks into a church, and it doesn't even have to be a preacher. It could be an old lady there sitting praying. And it's like, I'm having issues, and just a small little conversation. It doesn't have to be spirit or, religious or anything like that, but just a quick 2-minute scene to give him perspective to move on to that next stage would have been nice. The movie's perfect the way it is, but an extra 2 minutes wouldn't have hurt.
Yeah. It's not spoken in the film, but it's almost like when he sees somebody else lose their life, that makes him realize that life is valuable, life is meaningful. And not only does he value other people more, but maybe he starts valuing himself more, because he stops trying to off himself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I also think his conversations with Rita, because he's trying to get the hookup with her, and she's explaining what she looks for in a man. And then he starts trying to impress her by being a better person. And I think maybe part of him says, you know what, I kind of like this. I like being social and interacting with people. It's not as bad as it seems, So maybe that could have been a turning point in that too.
Yeah, because at first he was trying to make himself a better person only in her eyes based on what she was telling him, not based on what he actually was.
Right.
It was the point where he actually saw something in himself that he could offer and actually more genuinely build that relationship, as opposed to just constructing himself in the way that she would, in the light that she would want to see him in.
Right. Exactly.
And then that takes us to acceptance, which is the final part of the movie, where he's changing the old lady's tires. He's learning to play piano. He's learning to be a psychologist, maybe, with the married couple. I don't know how I got WrestleMania tickets that late. It's already February. Those things were sold out. He put down some serious money on that. Although 93 was pretty weak. He learned to play piano. He's learned all this different stuff. He's reading books. He's, again, becoming a better person, accepting that, as long as I'm here, I might as well improve myself. So,
yeah, it's sort of like we're handed moments and sometimes extra time or things, we don't necessarily expect to have. And how do we deal with that? How do we handle that? Do we do something that is great and provides value and improves a relationship, or do we waste that time? Right. And so if you're thinking about the philosophical aspect of this, if we had that extra time, if we had the same day to live over and over again, would we do the same things every single day, or would we try to build upon ourselves in the process? Yeah. And at first he was just checking a list, and then it turns into him actually, like, I always loved the learning how to play piano thing, because I think back of growing up as a kid, man, if I'd only taken piano lessons and I'd be so much better a musician than I am right now. Well, it's like, if I had that same day to do over and over again, I don't know that it would click with me to say, hey, let's go learn something. If I have to do this, then I'm going to go ahead and actually better myself through it. And eventually he got to that point once he accepted it.
Yeah. And supposedly he was there for, 33 years and 350 days. So it's a lot of time.
Plenty of time to learn
how to do stuff. You better accept your situation by that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like he decided, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to try to be a better man. I'm going to care about other people, and I'm going to work on myself whether or not my situation changes. And I think that's a really good message from a film.
I guess the only thing I would say, and this isn't a gripe by any means because I can accept it as the way it is, but they never really explained why he was going through this loop. Why was he chosen? Why did he have to go over this day every day for 33 plus years? And I don't know if we need that explanation, but that's the annoying part of my brain is I always want everything to be laid out perfectly. But again, it's one of the things where you can take it how you want, and it's like, well, you're not wrong.
I was thinking maybe the reason it was Groundhog Day is the day that he got stuck on is because that's the day that he's at his absolute worst.
That's a good point.
That's
That's
the
a
worst
really
day of his
good-
life, and he hates it. So if any day you're going to get stuck and you're going to learn how to be a better person, it's going to be on the day that you are your absolute worst.
I think that's actually something that does happen to people. Like they don't literally wake up reliving the same day over and over again, but they relive their negative cycles in relationships and friendships. And some people don't take the time to look inside and reflect on what's going on and how they're responding, and some people do. And I would think that being introspective is the key to making our relationships better and learning from our mistakes. So that is one very real takeaway from this movie. On our next episode, some of our crew actually traveled to the locations of this film and basically lived out the film a little bit. So be on the lookout for that. Hit like and subscribe. And as always, check the video description for links to some cool merch from this movie. We'll see you guys later.
I don't know if you can get this online. This is handmade from Punxsutawney. So, but yeah, thanks for watching.